Hi, welcome to my channel to listen to sinister stories. The House Alone. In the chilling recollection of a traumatic event during my childhood, I find myself transported back to a time when life was seemingly ordinary for a 10-year-old child in a family of 5. On this particular fateful evening, my cozy room, engrossed in the captivating world of Star Wars on my video game console, would become the stage for a horrifying ordeal. Suddenly, my peaceful sanctuary was shattered by the anguished cries of my mother. A tumultuous phone call engulfed the room, filling it with an eerie and unsettling atmosphere. Fear clawed at my heart as I rushed to investigate the cause of her distress. Little did I know, this would be the beginning of an unimaginable nightmare. It was revealed that my brother had been involved in a devastating car accident. Although his injuries were serious, they did not pose an immediate threat to his life. With urgency, my parents hastily departed for the hospital, leaving me behind, alone and vulnerable in our now foreboding house. Despite my concern for my brother's well-being, the thought of witnessing his pain weighed heavy on my young mind. Thus, an odd sense of solace settled within me as I contemplated remaining in the confines of my room. Resolute in my decision, I attempted to distract myself by immersing in my video game once more, endeavoring to escape the haunting reality that encroached upon my innocence. However, as the hours wore on and midnight drew near, an uncanny sensation enveloped the atmosphere of the house. Fatigue began to overtake me, draping my consciousness in a fragile veil between sleep and wakefulness. Then, an unmistakable sound shattered the tranquility of the house. The front door creaked open. Dread washed over me as an unsettling silence descended, crawling through the shadows like a sinister predator. Nervously creeping towards the banister, peered down into the abyss of the living room. What I beheld sent my heart into a frenzy of palpitations. 3 enigmatic figures stood ominously in the center of the room. Fear consumed me, paralyzing my every limb. In that moment, I stood petrified, fully aware of the insignificance of a 10-year-old child against the enigma of these unwanted intruders who had invaded the sanctity of my home. Desperate for a semblance of safety, I stealthily retraced my steps, tiptoeing towards my room, each stride bearing the weight of an unbearable silence. As I eased my bedroom door closed, its hushed click resonated like the deafening echo of thunder in the silence that imprisoned me. Holding my breath in despair, I wished against all odds that my desperate act had gone unnoticed. Alas, deep within the recesses of my being, I knew that my audacious hiding attempt had only intensified their pursuit. I could almost discern their ears pricking up, their heads turned into my direction. Suddenly, the gentle footsteps began to draw closer, their haunting rhythm reverberating through my very soul. My heart thundered within my chest, threatening to betray my presence with its cacophonous beat. This was the moment confronted with an unthinkable fate. I realized that the breath of life could perish from my fragile body. Words of farewell to my loved ones remained unspoken within the confines of my apprehensive mind. In a desperate bid for survival, I stumbled into the cramped shelter of my closet, pushing past the veil of hanging clothes and wedging myself into the darkest and most secluded corner, hidden behind boxes of forgotten memories. Concealed within this sanctuary, I strained to minimize my presence, yearning to dissolve into the very fabric of the walls that encased me. The footsteps, however, drew nearer, persistently encroaching upon my fragile sanctuary. With bated breath and eyes squeezed tightly shut, I dared not utter a sound, fearing that the intruder's presence loomed just beyond the frail confines of my closet door. Time seemed to stretch interminably as perspiration mingled with the stifling fear that gripped me. The closet door began to creak open, and a sliver of eerie light pierced through the suffocating darkness, slowly widening to reveal the malevolent presence lurking just beyond. In that moment, time itself paused, affording me a fraction of a second that held immeasurable weight. Silence enveloped my hiding place as I clung to the faintest glimmer of hope. My eyes squeezed shut, refusing to yield to the terror that awaited me. The intruder's figure dominated the doorway, casting an ominous shadow that loomed malevolently. Every second that he lingered registered like a lifetime, a twisted symphony of dread that echoed within the corridors of my mind. I resolved myself to the grim reality that he would soon discover me. drag me out, and extinguish the fragile flame of my existence. Yet, miraculously, the door gradually closed once more, as if by some unseen force. The elusive footsteps gradually faded away, leaving me ensconced within a veil of uncertain safety. For a moment, I dared not move, too fearful to believe my improbable luck. Although still immersed in danger, I clung to the fragile assurance that for now, I remained untouched by the sinister hands of fate. I remained hidden, a prisoner of my own sanctuary, until the soothing sound of my parents' voices breached the unsettling silence in the early hours of the morning. They returned to find the front door ajar, and our home raided by the unseen predator that had haunted our sacred space. That harrowing night changed everything. What began as an ordinary Friday swiftly unraveled into the most petrifying and soul-shattering experience of my young life. The chilling realization that the intruder had potentially sensed my presence, yet chose to spare me, tormented my thoughts for years to come. Reflecting upon those events in hindsight, I am reminded of the devastatingly close encounter with a peril that could have severed the thread of my existence. It was in that darkness that I was compelled to blossom prematurely. My innocence snatched away, replaced by a vigilance and awareness of the world's treacherous depths. The nightmare forever etched in my memory served as a haunting reminder to be perpetually cautious, cognizant of the quiet terrors that lurk in the shadows, lest another nightmarish chapter be written in the fragile pages of my life. Years passed, and I found myself as a 17-year-old, my parents hastily departing for a weekend getaway, leaving me to revel in the alluring prospect of solitude. Craving the semblance of independence that such moments fostered, I eagerly embraced the idea of having the house to myself. Little did I know that the weekend would metamorphose into a crescendo of hair-raising terror and ordeal that would etch itself into the annals of my existence. As the first rays of the fleeting autumn afternoon cascaded through the windows of my now empty home, I reveled in the tranquility that blanketed the premises. My parents had embarked on their trip while I remained at school, and upon my return, I retreated into the familiar solace of my room. Engrossed in the captivating worlds of my Xbox, I sought refuge in virtual camaraderie, engaging in lighthearted banter with friends. With the hours passing, as darkness enveloped the exterior world, a subtle shift in the atmosphere began to infiltrate my senses. The uncanny aura of solitude was supplanted by an inexplicable presence, an indescribable chill that crawled up my spine. Cautiously, I pressed pause on my game, my ears straining to discern any anomalous sound. The house responded with deafening silence, save for the whisper of the living room clock, its diligent ticking resonating with an eerie weight. Attempting to dismiss my escalating unease, I sought refuge in the solace of rationality, assuring myself that it was merely a figment of my imagination, a manifestation of idle fears. I attempted to silence the disquiet that brewed within my soul. Yet, in that very instant, the sound manifested once more in ethereal scraping, like the torturous drag of an unidentified object across the wooden floor below. My heart, once steady, now throbbed with an erratic pulse, threatening to escape the confines of my chest, shattering the illusion of normalcy. I muted the TV, intently focusing my senses on the ethereal sounds that defied explanation. Transfixed, I awaited confirmation, like an unwitting participant in a sinister game of fate. Once again, the sound reverberated through the empty corridors of our abode. This time closer, my trembling hand gravitated towards my phone, contemplating the act of contacting my parents. However, the words refused to coalesce. What explanation could I offer for my mounting terror, my inexplicable dread? Convinced that such alarm would only foster unwarranted worry, I reluctantly abandoned the idea of reaching out for aid. Clutching onto the ever-elusive pillar of courage, I resolved to stand my ground, to confront the shadows that threatened to consume me. It was a decision that, with the burden of hindsight, I would come to rue. With trembling steps, I descended the staircase, stealthily navigating the ominous stillness that had claimed the abode. The source of the dissonant echo ceased as I ventured further, the darkness in league with an oppressive coldness that wrapped around the house like a shroud. Finally, I reached a landing, peering into the living room with trepidation. Nothing seemed amiss. Yet an undeniable weight hung heavy upon my soul. In a heartbeat, an eruption of sound assaulted the air, resounding crash reverberated from the kitchen. Panic seized me, every muscle tensing, every nerve electrifying with a primal instinct to survive. The illusion of normalcy vanished instantaneously, replaced by the silent realization that an unfathomable presence resided within our home. Laden with an overwhelming fear, my heart pounding like an incessant drumbeat, I hesitantly flicked on the kitchen light, drenching the room in a harsh, unforgiving glow. No intruder manifested before my eyes, yet a drawer stood open, its chaotic contents defiantly strewn across the counter. Panic seized my senses as I realized that this was not how I had left it. It was a sobering reminder that the malevolent element lurking within these walls was far from spectral. It was a palpable, menacing force. The internal battle between instinctual survival and prudent reason raged within me. Ravaged by fear, I yearned to retreat, barricading myself within my room and summoning the aid of others. Yet, an indomitable spark of curiosity burned within, compelling me to unearth the truth that festered within the shadows. Silently vowing to protect myself, I seized a kitchen knife, gripped tightly in my trembling hand, simultaneously serving as a feeble reassurance and a testament to the impending danger. Silence enveloped the house once again as the abhorrent presence loomed in the periphery of my vulnerable existence. Uncertainty gripped me, my senses heightened to an agonizing degree. Then, the front door emitted a soft creak, a solitary footprint in each taunting sound. Fear consumed me, obliterating the remnants of naive hope that had clung tenaciously to my being. My grip on the knife tightened, its cold comfort serving as my sole ally in that terrifying moment. It was at that precise instant that fear usurped every fiber of my being, extinguishing the flame of unwarranted bravery and coaxing me once again into the waiting embrace of prudence. Bolting up the stairs, each step a frantic race against the specter of impending doom, I sought refuge within the sanctuary of my bedroom. My breaths came in erratic gasps, my trembling hands struggling to dial the number that connected me to the outside world, the voice of my parents. 1 ring, 2 rings, and then AM in the depths of my fear. I could sense them drawing nearer to the very confines of the closet in which I was trapped. With no route of escape to be found, the closet door ominously began to creak open. I braced myself, clutching a knife tightly in my hands, prepared to defend myself against the unyielding darkness. But then, to my surreal surprise, a voice pierced through the air, not menacing, but rather bewildered. A tremendous wave of relief washed over me, quickly followed by frustration. "Jake, what in the world, man? You nearly scared the life out of me," I exclaimed as he abruptly flicked on the light. His face mirrored both relief and guilt as he murmured, "I apologize. I didn't mean to startle you. I came home early from my trip thinking you had heard me enter. Why didn't you say anything?" Emerging from the closet, my entire being still trembling with residual fear, I responded, "I thought you were an intruder. Why were you creeping around in such a manner?" Jake simply shrugged, a sheepish grin forming across his face. "I wanted to surprise you. I suppose I succeeded, huh?" We shared a laugh, the tension dissipating into thin air. Realizing that it was all a misunderstanding, I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that danger had not truly lurked in the shadows. But the essence of that fear, it remained palpable, serving as a chilling reminder of how swiftly circumstances can change and how suddenly one can find themselves unprepared for the unforeseen. As we sat down and engaged in conversation, I couldn't shake the lingering sensation of what might have been. The events of that night etched themselves deeply into my consciousness. A combination of relief, laughter, and an unshakable sense of the possibilities that had narrowly averted us. Living alone in a downtown apartment situated near a bustling city center, I'd become accustomed to an environment that was typically lively yet safe. However, that unsettling incident from a few months ago had forever altered my perception. On that fateful evening, after a grueling day at work, I wearily ascended the stairs to my fourth-floor haven, yearning for solace and tranquility. As per my usual routine, I locked the door behind me, eager to rejuvenate myself with a soothing shower before donning comfortable attire for bed. But strange noises disrupted this anticipated respite, the doorknob turning with an eerie insistence, as if someone sought entry into my sanctuary. My surprise and mild alarm compelled me to approach the door cautiously, peering through the small, voyeuristic lens of the peephole. The hallway outside appeared hauntingly devoid of life, an unsettling emptiness. Dismissing the incident as a potential misfire, I attempted to regain composure and proceeded with my evening activities. Yet, approximately 20 minutes later, comfort transformed into dread as the sound of the doorknob rattling invaded the tranquil ambience of my dimly lit room. This time, the determined and persistent twisting communicated a chilling truth. Someone was deliberately attempting to gain access to my abode. Heart pounding like a war drum, I gingerly extracted myself from the embrace of my bed, maneuvering silently towards the source of disturbance. Peering through the peephole once again, I witnessed a man standing just beyond my threshold. His disheveled appearance and ominous demeanor sent a spine-tingling shiver coursing down my spine, immediately raising suspicions within me. He attempted to breach the door once more, briefly scanning the corridor before fixating his unsettling gaze back upon my security boundary. A surge of panic electrified my senses, urging me to retreat hastily from the door and avoid direct confrontation with this stranger. Hopeful thoughts that he would leave of his own accord battled with the need to ensure my own safety. Time shifted, morphing into an eternity, as my anxiety-laden eyes remained glued to the man's lingering presence in the corridor. The battle within me, juxtaposing the yearning for safety with a gnawing curiosity, reached its culminating point. Finally, the man appeared to surrender, relinquishing his machinations and embarking upon an exit down the dimly lit hallway. Relief washed over me, mingled with a lingering sense of apprehension. With trembling hands, I cautiously pried open my door, peering outside to confirm his departure. But just as I began to exhale, I caught sight of him at the distant end of the corridor. It was then that time seemed to distort, for the man abruptly ceased his retreat and pivoted, fixing his gaze upon me. In that harrowing moment, my heart ceased to beat as he broke into a sprint, drawing closer to my trembling form. In a flurry of panic, I hastily retreated into the sanctuary of my apartment, slamming the door shut and securing it with a resolute click. The desolate sound of his failed attempt to breach my defenses echoed through the silence, serving as a haunting reminder of the danger that lurked mere inches away. The man's deafening pounding against my door resonated through the walls, discordantly intermingling fear and defiance within me. With resolute determination, I mustered my courage, raising my voice so that it reverberated through the barrier. "What do you want? Why are you tormenting me?" I shouted, demanding answers. Yet, the silence that followed my plea was far more chilling than any response he could have offered. The man's ominous presence persisted outside my door, leaving me steeped in desperation. A visceral cry escaped my lips as I announced my intent to summon the police. At the sound of these words, he finally relented, his silhouette retreating down the dimly lit corridor, gradually fading into obscurity. For the ensuing hour, I remained on high alert, periodically glancing through the peephole to ensure he had not returned. Gradually, as my sense of security settled upon me once more, I mustered the strength to retire to my bed, although sleep eluded me. That night, the incident etched itself into my psyche, leaving a profound mark of caution upon my soul. No longer was home merely a sanctuary. It became a constant reminder of the fragile nature of personal security, even amidst familiarity. If you want to be scared, watch another video on the Sinister Stories channel.